Hello everybody, welcome back to the Eng Lang Pro YouTube channel. My name's Tori, I'm one of the tutors on the team. All of us on the team have scored more than a 45 raw in English language, and we're here to help you guys do the same or to learn more about this wonderful, fantastic subject. And today I'm going to be teaching you guys about something that I've been asked a lot about by students, about the patterning that is relevant in this study design. So there are 4 of our subsystems that have a patterning sort of listed in the study design. Those are phonological patterning, morphological patterning, which is also known as word formation processes, so don't get confused. We've also got syntactic patterning, which is nice and short, just 3, and semantic patterning, which is nowhere near as short. So today I'm going to be going through each of them. It's just revision. You guys should all be, at least if you're in year 12, you should all be pretty much aware of all of these by now, hopefully, as the time of recording is May. But yeah, it's super relevant to your short answer questions and your AC, and you need to be able to identify specifically different types of patterning, because there have been short answer questions in the past that have asked students to identify patterning within text or text A. All right, so starting off strong, we've got our phonological patterning. So this is not connected speech processes. This is not prosodic features either. So honestly, I recommend for you guys, print out the study design meta-language table and stick them up on your wall right above your desk. That's what I did. I had I still do have a good 30 odd sheets of paper up on my wall right now. It's less English language stuff, although there is a few leftover stuff from English language, but mostly it's stuff about the gastrointestinal system now. But yeah, so have it there, have it somewhere where you look every day, because you need to know this stuff inside and out, and you need to be able to identify, oh, is this question asking me about connected speech processes? Am I talking about assimilation and elision here? Or is it asking me about prosodic features? Am I talking about volume and pitch? Or is it talking about phonological patterning? You cannot get confused, and you have to know the difference between them all. So phonological patterning is, I think, the best way to think about it is to remember what is phonology itself, the actual system, right? So phonology, we're talking about patterns in speech sounds. And so we have 6 phonological patterning processes that we need to know, and they are alliteration, assonance, consonance, onomatopoeia, rhythm, and rhyme. And so when I was in year 12, I made this little, well, it's an acronym and initialism, RAW AC. So we've got our rhythm, onomatopoeia, alliteration, rhyme, assonance, consonants. It doesn't work very well, and the reason for that is there's 2 R's and 2 A's, so it's very confusing, but it's nowhere near as bad as the morphological one, which we'll get to later. So examples, alliteration, and again, reiterating that all of you guys should already know this. This should just be a little bit of revision. But yeah, alliteration, so repetition of the initial consonant sound in the start of a sequence of words. So Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers, classic sort of tongue twister type. And the reason we might use it is rhythm and to increase memorability. Assonance. Here we've got the same sound in the middle of words. So rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain. Same thing. It's about the rhythm and the melody of the way that we're speaking. So if you get a literary text or a poem or something like that, this phonological patterning is a huge thing that you need to talk about, because it's really difficult, first of all, to analyze literary texts. But second of all, if the purpose or the function of the text is emotive or poetic in some way, then you should be using these examples of meta-language to analyze it. Super important, because they're the main sort of devices and techniques that are being employed when we're creating a poetic function. Cool. Consonants, same thing as assonance, except we've got consonant sound, so lumpy, bumpy. We're talking about the M and P sound. Onomatopoeia, so words that are specifically designed to sound like what they are describing, buzzed, gurgled. Rhythm, so really hard to find rhythm. So iambic pentameter is the example that they put here. To be completely honest with you, unless it's being read out loud, is really, really difficult to identify rhythm. So either you're counting syllables in the exam or you probably won't find it, and that's okay. Focus on what is salient, which rhyme might be. So rhyme, pretty classic, when you can see the typically end of lines will have rhyming sounds. Again, all of this is for memorability and to create a more beautiful sort of text. Perfect. So those ones are pretty okay, at least for me. I didn't struggle too much with remembering those. These ones, however, morphological patterning, very difficult. So if you remember what I said before, morphological patterning is also known as word formation processes. So it's really easy to get confused between the two. So know your stuff and be confident in it. Morphological patterning is the same thing as if they ask you in a short answer question about specific word formation processes. And again, same thing with phonological patterning. Think back to your basics. What is morphology? And thankfully, actually, although overall it is a little annoying that they've named it two things, word formation processes does kind of help you guys figure out what morphological patterning is. It's just how are words created. So there's a whole bunch of them, and they've magically made them all start with basically the same letter for you guys, which means memory devices are basically impossible. But a little fun one is angry students can bake brownies and cook interesting cakes. I think mine back in year 12 was something like cabins 4C. The 4 was for all the different C's that there are. Although there look to be only 3 there, so maybe I'm wrong. But it was something like that. Wasn't very helpful. I recommend for morphological patterning, honestly, rote learning, unfortunately, in terms of being able to identify them all. However, the point of VCE English Language is not to rote learn morphological patterning. The point of it is to be able to be given a text with a form of morphological patterning and be able to identify what it is. So if you guys really sit down and properly learn what each of these morphological patterning actually means, what it entails, so how, for example, affixation can create a new word, then you should be able to identify something using recall rather than, or what's it called? I'm trying to get back to my psychology, VCE psychology, but sort of prompted recall from when you're given it rather than having to recall it on the spot just from your knowledge without being given the text. So that's the best way to learn. Me personally, I just learned it because I was scared about the exam. So whatever floats your boat, but let's go through it. So affixation first. So prefixes, infixes, suffixes, pretty easy, pretty similar to what we discussed, or you guys would have discussed in year 11 VCE English Language when you talked about morphology as the subsystem itself, mostly just root words and affixation. That is one of the key and also one of the easiest word formation processes to identify. Then we've got abbreviation. So abbreviation and shortening, difficult to determine which of the two. And in actual fact, shortening is just when a longer word is reduced to a shorter form in some way. But abbreviation is often just the first couple letters or includes a full stop. So if you see something like ST for street full stop or DR for doctor full stop, it's an abbreviation. Shortening is where the long form is just reduced to a shorter form. So this is actually really hard to differentiate, but another example, so shortening, it's just reducing the word to a shorter form through taking out syllables, which of course abbreviation also does. But another example is fridge from refrigerator. Refrigerator. Oh, yes. Oh, wait, I don't think they have a... Well, that's rather confusing. Anyway, these two are hard to differentiate, but the only time I would actually really use them is when I'm discussing the uniquely Australianisms of an abbreviation plus the hyperchoristic use of endings. So in the study design, it actually does specify that words like mozzie are an abbreviation, so mosquito to moz, presumably, with the IE hyperchoristic ending. So that's really the only time where you'd actually talk about it. Otherwise, it's just really not the most salient feature. Blending, classic brunch is the example for that, but you could also talk about frenemy, for example, if you come across a more modern text. Back formation, so this one extremely confusing, and in actual fact, never really used in exams, because when you're given the word that's backformed, you have no way of actually knowing that without having background information on the etiology of that word. So, for example, the word formation processes. The first one we talked about was affixation. It's the most common sort of feature, device that we use to create new words. Usually, we already have that root word, and then we add a suffix. Back formation is when that's sort of the inverse way, and we've started with a word with an affix that we've then removed. So edit is apparently formed from editor by removing the suffix or. And can confirm, because I've just straight up Googled edit etymology, although I spelled it wrong, and it comes from addition and then editor and then taken out the or suffix to create edit. So that's back formation. Generally, you would never use it unless the text is specifically giving you the fact that, which this has never happened, but if, for example, a short answer question were to say that this word in line 3 has been formed from this other line, what sort of process is this? Which they never do. They always ask you to identify the example and the feature, so it just wouldn't happen. But it's good to know for your own knowledge. Conversion of word class, it's when we take one word and without altering its form, so without using affixation, it's changed to a different word class. So, for example, to run and run is the same word, no affixation has occurred there, but we've got a new word class. Initialism and acronym, do not get these mixed up. Initialisms, think, what are your initials? Mine are TR. So I didn't say tr, I said TR. I said the letters. So initialisms, you say each letter. So FBI, compared to an acronym, which is NASA, where you say it as if it were a word. Contraction, combining two words into one by omitting letters. So the one with the apostrophe. So these are good to get across of. Most of them are either to increase the ease of which we're talking, so making it easier for us to talk because things are shorter, or there are less letters or less words, to become more informal. So think about the context of the text and who's talking, or to, with initialism acronym, it could be also to come across as more of an expert. So by maintaining authority or establishing expertise, you can do that with especially, well, only initialisms and acronyms that are proper nouns of companies or some sort of business that has already got a lot of prestige associated with it. So those are some of the reasons why we might use these different word formation processes. Moving on now to syntactic patterning. These ones are quite difficult, actually, not listing, but antithesis and parallelism. Basically, parallelism, the way I think of it, is that we're using similar grammatical structure in different clauses or phrases within a sentence or within a few sentences that have created rhythm. So, for example, I came, I saw, I conquered. We're starting with the same letter I or word I. The first pronoun is repeated 3 times within this one sentence, and came, saw, and conquered, they're all along the same sort of vein in which they all support each other. They're not directly contradicting each other like antithesis would. Antithesis is very much the same in terms of structure. It's just that the ideas presented within this parallel structure contrast each other. So, for example, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the something of times is the same structure, right? We're using the same words for most of that clause, but then we've changed the major adjective. So and those two adjectives are completely contrasting. If it were, it was the best of times, it was the greatest of times, then that would be parallelism. We're still along the same vein. It has to be directly contradicting each other for it to be antithesis. And you've got listing, which is just a way to kind of either make a point about the sense of abundance, or it could just be to back up your claim about something. So similar sort of idea where I'm trying to emphasize how much shopping I need to do. We need to buy eggs, milk, bread, cheese, anything else that has lactose in it. And So that's emphasis. Or it could be in terms of something like listing out in dot points is just for clarity. So a good purpose connected there, where if you are reading like a terms and conditions where the information has to be there, but it doesn't need to be in full sentences, it aids your cohesion and coherence in that way. Great. Then flying through this, we've got our semantic patterning last up. So again, thinking back, what does semantics actually mean? We're talking about the relationship between meaning of a word and sign, which is the actual word. So there's quite a broad range of them. This one we do have a good memory device for. This one I stole straight off a Quizlet that I was using in year 12, Lipimus, and I can still, from the top of my head today, name what each of them are. So we've got lexical ambiguity, irony, personification, pun, metaphor, oxymoron. Wait, sorry. Personification, pun, oxymoron, metaphor, animation, simile. And yeah, let's get straight into it. So remembering that we're talking about relationship and sign, what that's going to kind of bring up to the forefront of your mind, hopefully, is how can we manipulate the meaning of words and phrases? And so that's why we start with figurative language. Now, I don't like that they've listed this in semantic patterning because figurative language is by itself an umbrella term that has a lot of different features. Like I would say that metaphor and simile are both forms of figurative language. So it's not one that you actually use unless you can't find a more specific example of semantic patterning. But it's basically just when you're talking about imagery. So figurative language and imagery. I've got an example there, time is a thief, and hopefully by the end of the video, or even before the end of the video, you're able to identify that that's a different type of figurative language as well. Irony. So irony, we're talking about when an intended meaning is kind of almost juxtaposing, or it's a little bit funny how something is presented because it shouldn't be that way. So you guys probably know the lay meaning of irony. It's not like it's not used in everyday life. It's actually quite hard to describe when you're trying to actually define it, but basically highlights a contrast between expectation and reality. So fire station burning down is a pretty classic example of something that's ironic. Metaphor, so direct comparison without using like or as, so the world is a stage. Is a good example. And then oxymoron, so basically we're juxtaposing two opposing ideas, so deafening silence or cold fire or something like that. Then we've got simile, so it's metaphor, but it does use like or as, so we're comparing things, but it's not as almost aggressive as a metaphor is. So her smile was as bright as the sun is a simile. Hyperbole, an exaggeration. So I'm so hungry I could eat. Hang on, if I make that joke, it'll be out of date very soon. But if you're watching in 2025, you probably what I'm alluding to there. Personification. So this one and animation, I'm going to spend a little bit of time discussing. So personification has the word person in it. It's attributing not acutely, sorry. I'm in my medicine brain, but it's attributing innately human qualities to something that's non-human. So the wind whispered through the trees. Whisper is an innately human thing. It's not something that other animals or other animate objects can do that aren't created by us. So we're personifying the wind here. However, in animation, it doesn't need to be necessarily a human trait or characteristic. So life or movement of any kind to an inanimate object or concept. So the wind howled through the trees. This is, well, classically you'd attribute this to a wolf. It's not human, so therefore it's animation, not personification. Good to get kind of over the difference between those two. Puns, a form of word play. So pretty classic, good fun. I used to be a baker, but I didn't make enough dough is classic. So it plays upon words that have multiple meanings. Lexical ambiguity. So this is when basically it kind of plays on the weaknesses of English language, which are the fact that, for example, we don't have an inflectional change in our words when we're meaning different things, at least not as much as some other languages maybe do. So when we say something like the chicken is ready to eat, it could mean two completely separate things. And unless we have context clues, we don't know what it is. We have no clue if the chicken is eating or if we're eating the chicken. Great. So just to summarize with figurative language and semantic patterning, this one also links very highly to literary text. So when I was talking before about phonological patterning, literary text, I mean novels or short stories, which are pretty rare, but classically I think 2019 VCE English Language paper has one. Figurative language and semantic patterning comes a lot when you're analyzing those because, again, it links very intrinsically to that poetic or storytelling function of or purpose of the text. So with these, the reason why the author or the writer is using them is in order to create a vivid image in the head of the reader and to make it more enjoyable or to sell more copies, whatever that final purpose or intent is. That's for you guys to decide through context clues and through having actually read the text. So I hope this helps you guys, and I would really, really highly recommend that you go back almost monthly to the study design meta language table and just make sure you haven't forgotten things, because it does happen and you'll be kicking yourself in the exam if it's something like patterning, where just a little bit of revision every now and then can really save you when it comes to short answer questions or AC writing. So I hope that helps you guys, and all the best for your future studies. See you later.